A big thanks to our sponsors who make the pudding possible.
The American Camp Association of Illinois is made up of nearly 289,000 members, volunteers, campers, families, and professionals who believe in the power of camp. They work to disrupt the effects of poverty by providing fundamental services for children and families and learning opportunities for camp professionals. Learn more about ACA Illinois by visiting acail.org. You know the impact you want to make in a child's life, but figuring out the day-to-day details can be overwhelming. Let Camptivities help you make that impact by streamlining the creation of your camp activity schedules. Schedule a demo at camptivities.com.
Welcome to Season 2 of The Pudding.
The sweet proof of research to back up what you already know about summer camp. Hi, I'm Dr. Mandy Baker, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Travis Allison, mine are he, him. And we're excited, Mandy, to get started on Season 2 with...
This is Victoria. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Victoria, for the long-term listeners, will have heard her on the end of Season 1 and with a bunch of other people, but we wanted to give her her own space to talk about some of the cool stuff that she's doing because of lots of reasons that you'll hear. So, Victoria, can you again tell us who you are, where you work, and what your job is?
Yeah, no problem. I'd be happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Povilaitis. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Tim Horton's Foundation Camps. Many of our Canadian listeners hopefully recognize that organization. We go, our nickname, Tim's Camps. You'd be familiar with us from Tim Hortons and Camp Day. But my role at Tim's Camps is the Director of Program Innovation, which sounds really scary and really intense, but it's not. It's a blend of my most favorite things, which is research, data collection, measurement, analysis, and then using that information to really make amazing program improvements so that our campers have a really positive experience when they come to see us.
Yeah, big ups to Tim's for investing in the research. Yeah.
It's a bit unusual, actually, for camps to have that capacity, and Tim's has been very intentional about building that in, right? I would have assumed fairly early on in the idea of running camps. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about Tim's Camps? Because there's going to be listeners that wouldn't be familiar and what that is and who comes and what do they do, that kind of stuff.
No problem. So Tim's Camps was founded in 1974, which means that this year is our 50th anniversary, which is super, super exciting for us. We are an organization that has multiple camp locations across North America. So we have 7 locations across Canada and the US. And through our programs, we serve youth from low-income backgrounds. When you think of camp, many people think just summer camp, which, yes, that's true. We do serve youth throughout the summer, and that's what a lot of our fundraising goes towards, is helping our young people come to camp throughout the summer months. But we actually serve more youth throughout the school year by bringing different school groups and organizations to our sites to receive camp programming at no cost at all to the family or the organization that we're working with. And new this year, again, to celebrate our 50th anniversary, is a new form of programming where no longer are we bringing kids to camp, but now we're actually bringing camp to kids as well.
Smart.
So yeah, it's
So
super
excited about that.
exciting. And it's just been a pilot this past spring. So spring 2024, we started in a single day event, but also now a multi-week program. So we have a facilitator in the Hamilton and Toronto area that goes to different schools and visits them once a week for 7 weeks, delivering programming to youth in their classrooms. It's been an incredible initiative, and we're really looking forward to launching it in bigger and better spaces moving forward.
That's so exciting. I remember saying something to you, I think last time we hung out, where I was like, I had this idea that we could put camp in a van and take it to people. And you were like, we're doing it. That was your response. I was like, oh, of course, it's such a good idea. That's super exciting. And looking forward to when you have your hands on the data and you can tell us all about what's happening there and what you've learned.
For sure.
Before, Mandy, I know where you're going, but can we just pick up on that piece, Victoria? What sort of stuff do you put in place for a new program to start to gather data from the beginning?
For sure. It's a great question and something that I've thought really, really intentionally about over the past few months. We do have a measurement approach that we call Timpact 365. Hopefully you get that there. The impact and the Timpact 365. And we've been launching that with all of our existing programs. So our summer camp program and our school program, we really look at program quality measurement, outcome measurement, and impact measurement related to our big 3 programming elements of self, community, and future. And these three elements are all grounded in the research. So some of you might be familiar with some PYD research, the 5 C's of positive youth development, and then the 6 C of contribution. How we understand and program related to that 6 C of contribution is through self, community, and future. So this was a pre-existing measurement approach that we use for our summer program and our at camp school program. But we wanted to make sure that we continued with this measurement approach and really work towards measuring the same things in our new program as we have been in our existing ones, just so we can start to see differences based on where that programming occurs or what method it's delivered through. So we can really understand how we're best serving our youth and what they're learning and taking away from our program.
So
Victoria-
you just did technical jargon in there. Do you mind unpacking? Yeah, no,
Thank
I
you.
heard
That's
it.
what I
I
was
heard
doing.
it.
Yep.
No problem.
Do you want so 5 C's of positive youth development, I can usually remember 4. What are they again?
Let's see if I can remember them all. It's competence, confidence, connection, character, and caring. So these are the 5 C's of youth development. The idea here is that this is what young people learn when they're in a high quality youth development program. These are the skills and the outcomes that they're taking away. And then once they have that sort of foundational 5 C's, they're actually able to develop a 6 C of contribution. And there's a lot of different ways that you can think about contribution, that you can measure contribution, but our big 3 program elements are self, community, and future, and that's how we understand contribution to take place. And what's really cool, and I don't know if other camps do this quite so intentionally, is that we actually have specific activities dedicated to each of these big 3 elements. So
Amazing.
for example, when we're doing a self program, the intention there is that young people are learning more about themselves, their strengths, their abilities, and the huge focus is on intentional self-regulation. Some people envision that as emotional regulation, but we measure it and envision it really related to goal setting. So our self-focused activities are helping kids understand themselves, helping them set goals for themselves, ones that make sense, that are achievable, helping them work towards these goals, and then changing goals if challenges come up, or changing approaches to reaching those goals if challenges come up. The community element, kind of self-explanatory and really easy to get to in camp, because camp is such a strong community space. But we focus on pro-social behaviors. So what are behaviors that you can do that will help you contribute positively to the community and help you understand the value of being a community member? And then last, future is about helping kids, and this is really important for our young people that we work with who come from lower income backgrounds, but helping young people envision a more positive future for themselves, or looking to the future with greater optimism and hope. So how that appears in camp activities is building skills, whatever those skills might be that are important for them: teamwork, independence, responsibility, collaboration, all of the things you can think of. And then prompting our youth to think about how those skills will be helpful for them in their future contexts, like post-secondary education, jobs, relationships, whatever it might be. So we have that very direct tie between what we measure and what we program.
Yeah.
Stunning.
I have the privilege at times to work with the director of a research center I'm an adjunct in, and he does a lot of research on hope and how important hope is. And in particular, I learned this amazing kind of moment of learning from him when he talked about, depending on your life circumstance and often your financial resources, how you will have long horizons and short horizons. And the more privilege you have, the longer your horizon, the further into the future you can imagine, you can envision, you can set goals for, you can work towards. But when you really have to live from paycheck to paycheck, or from one moment to the next in terms of safety and comfort and opportunity, then it's a fairly short horizon. And therefore, hope actually shrinks with that shorter horizon. Like, how do I just get to tomorrow? So like you said, the populations you're working with, that kind of is almost like the exercises in lengthening out their vision of where the horizon can be for themselves, and appreciating that when you can see that and then work backwards and do all the steps that get you there, that you can achieve it. But if you have no sense, no imagination of what that long horizon could be, you can't begin to set yourself an action plan with, scaffolded, baby stepped out goals. That's pretty cool. That's exciting.
Sure.
I mean, you and I've had a few chats over the years. I don't know that we spent a lot of time talking about that hope piece, but I'm excited for you.
There's a lot of great work that's been done in the hope space. And I actually, last week, I think it was, I attended a presentation by Erica Yamaguchi and John Hamilton, and they both previously worked with the Alliance for Camp Hope. And John now works with the Alliance for Camp Health, but Erica spoke about hope science. And there's some really interesting work coming out from them about providing opportunities for young people with challenging circumstances, difficult backgrounds to see hope in smaller steps, right? What do I hope to accomplish later today? What do I hope to accomplish within this camp session? And how allowing young people to be successful and achieve those hopes and dreams in those smaller ways are really huge stepping stones to looking far down the future and what they'll be able to accomplish.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes. It takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced and engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Here's what Camptivities can do for you. Auto scheduling, camper scheduling, group scheduling, elective scheduling, manual adjustments, over 60 different reports, and tons of customizable settings. That and so much more. And don't wait until the new year. Now's the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% for the first year. We would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out to camp.
When you have these kinds of conversations and when you think about the populations you're working with, I think there's a degree of acknowledging that there's systematic and structural disadvantages for these young people. If there's not a family member who's there to support them in not just navigating getting through the steps, but discerning what those steps should be and how to do that. Or, I mean, some of the social science research, we talk about social capital, like having those resources, having those networks of professionals that a friend of a friend or my dad's accountant, or like those kind of social networks that open doors and suggest new ways. So when you hear about hope science, how much of it is engaging with the sort of structural, social, cultural, political, I guess, systems that oppress, that create difference and allow some people to have privilege and others not so much? Have they talked much about that?
I think it's a great question. And to be honest, they didn't speak much about that in the presentation that I attended last week, but I think it would be a huge component of it. Recognizing sort of the societal barriers and the systemic oppression that's in place is a huge part of understanding what you can accomplish, because those are some big hurdles, right? Yeah. And so how can we change the systems so that you can achieve more? And seeing role models who have accomplished these incredible things, who come from similar backgrounds as you, is incredibly important. But I think my recommendation, someone to talk to more about this, definitely reach out to Erica Yamaguchi and John Hamilton. They've got a wealth of experience and knowledge in that space.
Very cool. Thanks. Okay, well, we want to know more about you, Victoria. That's why we brought you here. So we'd like to know how you got your start in doing research and what on earth made you think camp. That's what I want to do. I want to do camp research.
I'll start with the camp piece, because I think first and foremost, I'm certainly a camp person at heart, and it's definitely shaped what I've been able to accomplish and the direction that my life has taken. And I think there's a cool story associated with this. So my educational background, I began as a teacher. So I was attending Brock University for concurrent education, and I was getting my qualifications in phys ed and French. And no, don't ask me to speak in French because I've lost a lot of that skill now. But phys ed was one of my teachables at the intermediate and senior level. And I remember after my fourth year, during my fourth year, I was sitting in a hallway outside my French classroom, and my friend said, "Do you want to do something fun this summer?" And that's certainly one of those points in your life that I can look back and go, that's when it all changed. When you can see those times where that's a whole different pathway that I've taken. So she asked me that question. I said, yes, of course. What is that? And she said, do you want to work at a camp, a sports camp in the States? Said, great. So we did the application, we both got hired on, and we went off and worked at that camp. And I ended up working at that camp for many summers. I spent about 9 summers perhaps there, which was an incredible experience for me. And I'm so thankful for that. And then being the nerd that I am, I wanted to continue on with my education. So I went to the University of Toronto for my master's, and that was in sports psychology. And I was speaking with my supervisor, and she said, so what's your research? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm interested in identity. I'm interested in runners because I was a long distance runner at that point. And she said, great. Well, let's talk about your summer. And I said, yeah, I'm going to camp. And she said, you have to do your program during the summer.
Yeah.
And that was news to me. That was news to me. And I said, okay, how can we blend these two passions of research and camp? And it really just fell into place for me. And since then, I've been focusing on camp-based research and other out of school time programs. And it's just been incredible opportunity to bring those two passions together.
Victoria, you're being humble, so I'm going to do the boast for you because I feel like I can. You went into the PhD program at University of Utah under one of the most respected camp researchers. And so we've talked about that. We obviously hang out with Jim. Hi, Jim, if you're listening. Jim Sibthorpe runs a lab that has been long established doing camp research with predecessors, including Deb Bielewski and Carla Henderson. So these are the people that I can now call colleagues and friends. But when I first met them, I got shivers and fangirled and probably embarrassed myself and them badly. They just are incredible researchers who really laid some of the earliest kind of North American camp research foundations, and that has been growing since. Victoria comes from the highest caliber of researchers in the field, and I would also say a really fascinating evolving lab. So a good group of solid people who have worked in camp research for now 3 or 4 decades. So your pedigree is rather high, and we can be very snooty about it. And none of the people that I'm talking about are in fact snooty about it, but congratulations, and to be an alum of that space and time.
Well, thank you. That's very you to say. And I agree with the fangirling point. I remember my very first presentation at the American Camp Association National Conference. It's where I was actually presenting my master's research and how I got involved with the group from Utah and involved in Jim Sibthorpe's lab. I did my presentation, and a very kind woman put her hand up and asked me a question. It was my very first question, and I responded to it. And I thought, okay, that was intimidating, but great. I've done that. I sat down in the audience beside my friend Kate Wilson, who was also in camp research and working in Jim Sibthorpe's lab, who I only met at that conference. And she said, do you know who that was? No, of course not. I have no idea. I'm new in this space. She goes, that was Dr. Carla Henderson. And I thought, the woman that I cited 100 times in my thesis. Wow, okay. So definite fangirl moment for sure. A little imposter syndrome and felt out of space, but yeah, it was quite an experience.
We could almost do a whole podcast on the first time I met Carla Henderson. And unfortunately, I wish I could just call her Carla. But you're right. It comes with this Dr. Carla Henderson because you've been reading her work for so long. And then like you, I'd cited it a zillion times, and she happened to be at a conference. And I stupidly, boldly, I don't know what you call this, I asked her to come to my presentation where I ended up critiquing her work. So it was somewhere where there was a moment after I asked her where I realized just what a goofball I had been. And but I couldn't help myself. So afterwards I went up to her and I was like, what do you think? Just terrified, but what do you think? And she said the most beautiful thing, which was, I am so glad that you picked that up and you're taking it forward. I never had any intention for that to be the last word. It was the first word of a long conversation, and you've joined it and you're taking it on and moving it along. And I'm to this day so grateful for that. And that is still like my motto of the academic I want to be. I want to be the academic who joins the conversation, says a thing, but never expects it to stay there, expects other people to critique it and pick it up and move it. And yeah, it's funny. Just last week, I was talking to someone, they said the exact same story as you. I didn't know. She put her hand up and she asked a question. I did my best. And then a colleague turned to me and went, do you know who that was? Like the grand, revered, just asked you a question. And then he said he became very obsessed about whether he answered that question well. Did I get it right? And a lot of those questions you can't get right. You just simply have to explain your thinking, right? Did I get it right?
Sure. Yeah. See, I didn't have the guts to actually invite anyone to my presentation like you did, but it was definitely an experience. And to your point about the type of person you want to be, even if I can broaden it, but in the research space, I very much want to be someone who encourages young researchers to do this type of work and encourages other people to do this type of work. If you're not familiar with research, it sounds scary, but when you get into it, you actually can do it. And that's something that I've worked to cultivate at Tim's Camps as well, as a network of young researchers. So I do have some amazing colleagues that I work with who have presented at ACA conferences as well. Lacey Maglinger, Jessica Blakely Smith, both fantastic folks and getting their toes wet in this space. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a good colleague and friend, Dr. Rob Lubeznik-Warner. He's fantastic, and he works in psychology at Utah now, and he has his own little research group, and he works with young people, and we partner with them. And so really working to further camp-based research and broaden it beyond just the folks who've been involved in this work for quite a long time. So encouraging other folks to do this work. It is possible. If you've got ideas, just do it. Just try it out.
And kudos to your colleagues, because I know I saw them present recently and they nailed it. So if they haven't heard that, they just nailed it. They did such an amazing job with it. And the research they're doing is fascinating.
Did you know that ACA Illinois' primary work is getting young people to camp from communities that traditionally don't attend? This includes providing services to 9,000 kids and adults from low-income communities throughout the state of Illinois annually. ACA Illinois has deep roots in using camp as a way to create social change in local, state, and national communities, including creating equitable access for all children to attend camp. ACA Illinois loves to try new things and believes it's how we create the most dynamic impact for our campers, staff, and community. This is why ACA Illinois always jumps at the chance to collaborate with content experts and countless volunteers to develop new and innovative programming. Ready to help us achieve this mission? Join us at acail.org. Are you a camp professional looking for community? Are you a camp interested in accreditation but don't know where to start? Are you looking to grow your career? Are you looking for ways to give back? Reach out to us at info@acail.org and let's get you connected.
So I'm going to segue us forward a little, if you don't mind, Travis, me taking over that one. Can you tell us about what you're doing right now with Tim's and some of the work that your colleagues presented on?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll speak on two sort of overarching projects, the first one being related to program quality, and the second arts-based methods or an artistic method. So when we think about program quality, I mentioned before, part of our TIMPACT strategy is three-pronged. So program quality, outcomes, and impact. Program quality really is just the way that we create high-quality spaces for young people at camp. And that's how camp leaders, so your counselor, your facilitator, your activity lead, the practices that they enact in order to create a safe space for young campers. My colleague, Lacey Maglinger, she's been working on this type of project for a little while, and we've introduced program quality to Tim's Camps. And part of the work that she's been doing is looking at how that new topic is being taken up by our camp teams. So it's new to them, not so much anymore. We've been doing it for a couple of years, but she's really looked at the process of how people come to understand program quality and engage in program quality assessments at camp. So she's done some incredible work in that space, and it's continuing to evolve. We're continuing to work with our camp teams to engage in high quality practices and to teach folks about this type of thing. The second one, Jessica Blakely Smith has done fantastic work with camp mapping, and it's also tied to program quality too, but it's about getting youth perspectives and youth voices involved in understanding their views of program quality. So we ask campers to really draw a camp map and indicate for us the spaces where they feel safe, where they feel supported, where they feel a lot of interaction with their peers and with learning, and where they feel engaged. And it's been really interesting to see the areas that people identify in these different spaces. It's really cool, and it helps us understand what quality looks like from a youth perspective in the camp world.
I mean, it's a thing that's been happening for a long time, is that a lot of youth and child research is an adult's perspective or perception of what the child or youth is experiencing or thinking or feeling. And at best, what we can offer as adults looking in is observations and in some hypotheses, but there's some, I think this is what's going on. So it's this move to actually capture what children and youth are saying and thinking and feeling, for them to be active agents in the knowledge creation, like what thoughts and knowledge we actually come out of the other end. So tell us more about, how are you doing that? How are you capturing or getting in there?
Yeah, these maps have been very interesting. And I think it helps us to understand, like you mentioned, Mandy, the sort of parameters that we as adults and we as researchers put on these concepts. So when you think about quality, what does quality look like from a researcher's perspective? There's a lot of very clear indicators of what that quality is, what those quality practices are. In fact, we use an approach from the Weichert Center for Youth Development, the SEL PQA for camps, and it has 41 different practices that you can observe that are indicative of quality. If you ask a child about that, they're probably not going to point to too many of those 41 practices. And they're really just going to say, oh, it's a quality experience if I have fun.
Sure.
That's the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean? What does fun mean to a young person? And what are the foundational components that need to be put in place so that they can have fun? That's where you get more towards the adult, the researcher perspective on it. And when we speak about safe, I've mentioned the term safe before. We're really actually talking about safety in terms of a social and emotional sense, not just a physical safety sense. So those are the things that need to occur in order for a child to feel that they can engage in the camp experience and then have fun.
So you said a bunch of letters when you were talking about the thing that you use to measure, that you base it on?
Yes, yeah. I'll explain that for you. Okay, so SEL PQA for camp stands for Social Emotional Learning Program Quality Assessment for camp. It's a mouthful for sure, but it's essentially just a tool that different practitioners can use to look at how their staff are creating a high quality camp experience for you.
Right. Can I I'll pick up on something from the mapping that is making me think about what are the surprising places? Like what shows up on a map that surprises you? What are the things that mean something to them that an adult may not have picked up on?
Well, one thing that I really loved was when you think about safety and support from a camper's perspective, there were more kids than I thought there would be that actually drew our camp flagpole. And when you think the flagpole, you go, okay, well, what happens at the flagpole? What is important about this space? Some of the flagpole drawings were fantastic because they were detailed. And the detail that I saw there was our pride flag, was our Canadian flag, was our Every Child Matters flag. And so granted, there might not be the direct conversation or the direct wording of I felt safety, I felt support in this space because of these specific indicators. But I think it really showcases that some of the more subtle ways that we can create safety and security for all of our campers, right? The fact that any campers picked up on that is fantastic.
Just the prevalence of the symbols alone made them really, really neat. Okay. What are some of the things that you've been thinking about long-term in terms of, first of all, are you doing longitudinal studies with your campers? What's the relationship with Tim's and the length of time that kids spend at camp or in the camp system?
With our summer program, we have campers come in and they participate in 4 levels. So they progress with us for 4 summers. So we do have the opportunity to engage in some more longitudinal work. I will say it's difficult to get kids to complete numerous surveys over many, many years, but it's certainly something that we're working towards. And we do have the ability, we've got a large enough sample size. We do serve thousands of youth. So we can certainly ask them all to complete surveys and see what we get back. A couple hundred every time is great. What would be fantastic is if those were all the same kids doing it time and time again. And it's not. So we're certainly looking more at the aggregate level or the average level of the full group rather than individual campers and having them monitored season over season. But we're still learning some interesting information.
You've been at this camp research game for a little while. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what you've done before Tim's or before these 2 projects that you've been talking about, because I know you've got a lot in your case. So tell us more about the other kinds of research you've done.
Of course. It's funny in full circle, actually, because my master's research, without knowing it, was on program quality. I didn't quite realize it at that point in time, but my master's work was really looking at the 8 features, and that was from Eccles and Gutman. I think they published that back in 2002. Oh no, it was the National Research Council. Lots of citations, but back in 2002, there was some work done on how you create a high quality setting. Those words weren't the words that they used then. And so I looked at these 8 features in the camp that I was working at and wrote my master's thesis on it. And now with Tim's, I'm looking at program quality. So certainly full circle in that space. But I've done some other interesting projects, of course, working on the ACA National Longitudinal Studies, the National Staff and Youth Impact Studies. My dissertation was on the staff side of things, so having that perspective was really cool. But I also did a fun project about smartphones at camp and working with kids what their perspective was on being at camp without their smartphone. It feels a little bit dated now, as I think that was back in 2018, and things have certainly changed a lot since then. But it was really exciting to hear kids say that they actually enjoyed not having their smartphones with them at camp. And I think one of the terms that came out from that was JOMO, the joy of missing out. They actually really enjoyed being at camp and missing out on everything that was occurring online. It was a bit of a respite for them, which was fantastic to hear.
I don't think that's outdated at all. So I've been watching a little bit more, and I'm not terribly good at following the news, but watching a little bit more about how the UK is talking about regulating actually the use of phones and the accessibility of smartphones for youth, particularly. It wasn't too long ago, it's actually fairly recent, the Ontario government has insisted that there will be no phone use at schools, public schools in the province. Of course, trying to listen to the government officials makes sense out of how that actually will physically happen. What are the logistics, who's in charge, et cetera, et cetera. And at this point, I don't think that's been ironed out. I think there's quite a bit of wrinkles to iron out. But that tells me, though, that your research is so actually on the moment, that these debates continue to go around, and the trying to understand the motivations and the justifications for saying, actually, take a respite, take a step back from that phone. And camps help, because we turn into the bad cop in terms of putting the boundaries around it and being like, okay, put your phone in the bowl, you're here now. But it's lovely to hear that there's joy in that the kids themselves actually can see and perceive that. That's really cool.
Yeah, one of my favorite findings from it was actually a few of the female identifying campers spoke about how they enjoyed the fact that there were no cell phones around, because it meant there were no photos taken of them. They didn't have to roll out of their camp bed and spend 15, 20, 30 minutes on their hair and makeup for thinking that they were going to get a photo taken, which would be posted online. They could actually just be kids and not have to do that prep to create a certain image that they wanted themselves to be seen in. So that was really interesting to hear from them. And a second piece was this phantom limb syndrome, akin to that, and how young people would say they pat their back pocket to try and find their cell phone, or some of the young women would pat their upper chest because they would keep their phone there in a secure place, and their phone wasn't there. Or they'd roll under their pillow to try and feel their phone under the pillow, and it wasn't there. And they said for the first few days, that was a bit shocking, but then they actually enjoyed the fact that it wasn't there, and they stopped patting their back pocket to try and find it.
Very cool.
Beth and I were at a camp that was a 3-week session. The kids had no cell phones for 1 week, and then they were given their cell phones back on the 8th day. And it was amazing to see the transformation of that camp on the 8th day. It was just bonkers to see it. It was so wild.
Tell me more. I'm curious, like what they...
Yeah, that got me all curious too.
Yeah,
like, what happened?
That's a long story, oddly involving the CIA, but we do not have time.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, different show. The after hours, the membership recording. Right on. Victoria, what are the things in camp research, yours or others, that you're excited about for the future?
It's a great question. I think there's incredible opportunity for camp to broaden. And when I say broaden, I mean access, but also inclusion. I think we know that the foundations of camp, early 1900s, was really to get wealthy white boys out of the city to experience nature. There is still some elements of that remaining in camp, but I think we've certainly moved away from that, and there's greater access to camp. And I think the next step is true inclusion. So creating that sense of belonging. We now have all kinds of people from all backgrounds, from all experiences coming to camp, and all the research has shown that camp is a positive and a beneficial experience for most people. And I say most because we haven't actually looked that much in detail at some of these diverse people's perspectives, right? A lot of the research has been done on that wealthy white person experiencing camp in more of that traditional sense of an 8-week camp experience, or even now more so that 1-week camp experience. But I think there's incredible opportunity for us to broaden our scope in terms of who we serve, how we serve those people, and how we research and understand their experiences.
Is there a researcher or researchers you think we should also look out for besides your beautiful work?
I think there's a lot of great researchers out there doing work in these spaces. And I think some younger folks, I know Monica Arkin has just done some incredible work creating a burnout scale, which I think is super interesting and something that many camp directors and camp facilitators can use, because that bubble of camp, that dense and intense experience of camp definitely contributes to burnout from so many perspectives. And so I think that's some great work that's been coming from Monica Arkin. I think there's incredible young researchers, and I always encourage folks to attend the American Camp Association National Conference and the Research Forum. And if you can't attend, check out the Book of Abstracts online. And online, they do have many years of the Book of Abstracts, so you can certainly read some of those studies. And I think that's an incredible place to look, because some of those studies don't actually turn into full-length academic papers. Those are more of the smaller studies, sometimes the one-off studies or the beginning of a longer line of research. So I think anyone who you come across in that space is certainly someone to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. They're super well vetted by some of the best in the field. They're emerging. And the other part is, and you can access them. So even if they do publish papers, they're sometimes behind paywalls. You can get to the abstract. You can probably go send an email straight to the researcher and get your hands on more information.
For sure. Yeah, it's the abstract and the poster. So there's different ways of digesting that information too. Lots of great information on those abstracts.
That's so great. Victoria, thank you so much for breaking in the second season of The Pudding. We're grateful to have you. If people have follow-ups, how can I get in touch?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to chat with anyone. You can access me on a lot of different social channels. So LinkedIn, if you look for Victoria Povilaitis, you'll find me. It's a unique last name, which is fantastic. It means there's not too many of me out there. But of course, you can access us online. We've got timscamps.com. We have some social channels as well through Instagram, Tim's Camps. Lots of ways to get in contact with me. And of course, as a last resort, you can always send me an email. My email address is my first name last name @timscamps.com. So that's victoria.povilaitis@timscamps.com. And it's a long one to spell, so you can include it in the show notes.
Yes, we'll do that.
Totally. Yeah, I was going to say, check out The Pudding on gocamp.pro, and we'll make sure that the show notes include ways to contact Victoria. So Victoria, we're grateful. Thank you so much for coming back on again and starting the season off with some amazing stuff. We're really grateful. I will say, if folks have ideas or other researchers we should be talking to, Mandy and I have a really great plan for this second season, and we've started planning a third season, and we're really excited about it. So we're grateful to be back and in your ears and a part of your camp life. But please do reach out to me if you have ideas or suggestions. I am Travis at gocamp.pro. And yeah, you can get in touch with me there, and I can pass stuff on to Mandy. We can work stuff out, and even pass on your thanks to Victoria if you have hard time finding her email.
Excellent. So if you didn't know, now you know, Camp Pros.
Go Camp Pro, way beyond the basics.